We're going to now look at discover, the second D, discover, which is part of this exploration phase, is discover. And one way of doing that is really to begin to understand and listen to our communities and hearing what people are saying. Now, for the sake of today, because when we talk about communities, there's lots of different ways we can understand that. We could be talking about workplace communities, online communities. We could be talking about just me and my street. We could be talking about my estate or my whole town or my whole city. There's so many different ways that we can think about what we mean by community. For the sake of this next session, we're going to take the example of thinking about a particular small geographical community as an example. Even though community may take different forms. And we're going to have a go at an activity that you can do with your groups when you go back to think about this process of discovering. So this is quite a visual way and quite a representative way of having a go at discovery. Now, on your paper, there's lots of exciting things, and you've probably added your own bits and pieces to it as well. But what we need to do is just make some space. And you should find some rolled up flip chart paper. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing some community mapping exercise. So if you want to just try and make some space, find that paper, see if you can unroll it. Now, if you've come as a group and on your table you are one group, you might want to think about your actual real community that you're a part of, or an area of your city or town. If you're a mixed group, then this is your chance to design an imaginary geographical location for the sake of the activity, okay? Everyone's looking around the group thinking, who's the creative person here? Who's the artist? So what we're going to be doing with this activity is we're going to create layers. We're going to create layers within our map. Layers. The first layer is the actual community itself, the geography, the who lives here, what's the facilities, what's the demographics, where are the roads, the streams, that kind of thing. The second asset that we build on top of that is the assets. What assets do we know exist in this area? The third then is where we begin to think about the needs from our own perspective that we perceive to be in this area. The fourth is then bringing it to us personally. What are the things that we are, when we look at this, what is it that brings out our passions? And what do we feel are the priorities? And then the fifth layer is the light, where we invite God in. So I'm going to guide us through this step by step. So we're going to start with that first layer. And what I'd like you to do in your groups, and there should be some coloured pens on your, you got them, is to have a go at drawing. It doesn't have to be to scale. No one's going to get marked on this for your artistic creativity. Have a go at drawing a map of a geographical community. Roads, streams, churches, buildings, schools. Just putting down and drawing a map of what a community looks like. Like I say, it could be your actual community if you're in your whole group, or an imaginary one. But have a go at drawing out a map of a community. Use the colours as much as you like. And you've got about 4 or 5 minutes just to put something out. So don't worry about too much detail, but have fun. Okay. Let's call it a day. Let's draw a line on our pictures now. I'm sure we could spend the whole afternoon doing this, couldn't we? And some of us who like to get into the details, thinking about everything that should be on our map. But let's just finish our maps there where they're at. You can actually, when you do this back home with your groups, you could spend a whole evening just doing this. Okay, so we've done layer one, the base layer, which is just a simple map of the community. What we're going to do now is we're going to add on to that a second layer. Now, you should have on your table some little coloured Post-it notes. Yeah, I'd like you to choose one of those colours. And what you're going to do is we're now going to be thinking, if you cast your mind back to assets, about different assets that we recognise in our community. They might be assets to do with like place-based assets, facilities. They might be about groups or organisations that exist, or people, connections, relationships, all those kind of things. So what I'd like to do now is build a second layer where you write on each individual post-it note a different asset and then stick it on your map somewhere that perhaps represents where that asset could be found. Or if it's an asset that's about relationships, connections, you can put them to the side or wherever you think represents that asset. So let's have a go at building that second layer now of assets. Wonderful. Okay, so let's just take a step back for a moment and have a little look and reflect on our map so far. We've done 2 layers. We've done a sort of geographical base. We've begun to identify the assets, asking ourselves the question, what is it that God has put in our hand, in our communities? Now we're going to look at a third layer. And the third layer is where we begin to, and again, this is from our perspective. That's an important thing here. From our perspective, what do we perceive to be some of the needs that we have identified within the community? And so with those post-it notes, if you've used one colour, maybe with a different colour. I did say that. But it doesn't matter. Maybe if you want to now put onto your map things that you've perceived to be needs in your communities, things that you've seen maybe as you walk around or you hear about, or things that you've seen in the news or people have told you about. We can now put onto our maps a third layer of the needs. This could be, for example, homelessness, isolation, youth crime, addictions. Highlight areas where you might find these. Okay, great stuff. Everyone's working really hard. This is looking great. Some colourful tables. So we've begun to build that third layer now, which is where we started to think about what the needs are that we are aware of, that we're seeing from our perspective within our community. So are we ready to build our fourth layer? So our fourth layer is where we begin to put ourselves into this story, and we begin to think about our own perspectives and our own passions, believing that God speaks to us, that God is speaking to our own hearts, and that we come into our communities often with things that we're really passionate about, things that we want to see change. So you should see some little coloured, small little coloured dots, stickers. And what I'd like to do is perhaps to have 5 each. And the way this is going to work is we're going to just take a moment to reflect and look at your map, and particularly thinking about those needs that you've identified, and to actually look inwards. What are the things that when you think about your community, what hurts? What is it that hurts? What is it that really stirs a passion in your own heart when you think about the community? And we're going to use these little stickers simply to symbolize the things that we've seen in front of us. What are the things that, that is a really important issue to me personally. And you might spread your stickers out, put 1 and 5 different issues, or you might be someone who says, actually, this is the thing that I'm sold out for, this one issue, and you might put all 5 stickers on that one need. So it's up to you how you do that. But I want everybody on your table to each take maybe 5 or so stickers and place them on the things that you're personally passionate about, that you think God is stirring your heart for.
So I'm just going to do a close by.
You can do this by your own. You don't have to do what others do. You can do your own thing. Okay. Great stuff. Okay, let's just take a moment now to have a look at what we've created and just to take a moment to reflect on that. What you might be looking at is you might spot there's some little clusters on your map where there's quite a lot of dots all in one place. And we're now going to build that 5th layer. And the 5th layer is the light. You might see some tea lights on your tables. And what I'd like you to do is, if you can see quite a clear cluster of stickers that really highlight key areas of need that you're really passionate about, I'd like you to place a tea light over that cluster of stickers. Or, Okay, this is where it gets a bit fun and a little bit risky. We're going to play with fire now. So, B here is going to come around. It's going to light one candle on each table, and then you can light the other tea lights from that one light. Okay, so we're just going to come around and light these candles. Okay. Let's just quieten the room down now for a moment and take a moment to reflect. I'm just going to read an excerpt from the book. It's good to remind ourselves that our ideas for social justice are actually not our ideas. They were placed in our hearts by God. It is God who reaches out and touches our hearts, stirring up a passion for the broken. The song Hosanna by Brooke Fraser has the line, "Break my heart for what breaks yours." It's a bold prayer. God is looking for people who will show his kindness and compassion. These candles, these lights represent that passion, represent those prayers for our communities. And this gives us an opportunity to remind ourselves that God loves our communities, that God loves each and every person. Let's remind ourselves of these Bible verses. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." And this verse, "In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Jesus calls us to reflect the light in this dark world, to give hope to the hopeless. And what we've just done in literally 25 minutes, you could spend a whole evening doing. In fact, actually, when we do this exercise, we spend a whole week preparing for it. We go out and do prayer walks. We look at the news, the local news. We do a little bit of research and really think about what we're doing. But this is a great activity that you can do back home with a group of people to say, let's really dig down and really understand and discover what is happening in our community. What are the assets? What are the needs? And also to give this wonderful opportunity to bring prayer, to invite God in to help us to really understand what it is that he's placed in our hearts that we're passionate for. It's so easy sometimes to feel overwhelmed when we see the scale of the need. And there's so many things going on. But sometimes it's not just about trying to do everything. What is it that God has put on our hearts? What is maybe the one thing that we can do, or the one or two things that we can do in one or two very specific ways and places, and start from there, and perhaps even work with others. Okay, unless you want to leave it on, let's blow our candles out in the interest of health and safety. Okay, thanks for doing that. I hope you enjoyed that. It is an example of an activity you can do with your groups. So I think the one thing I want to say on that is, and this is really important, is that what we've just done is from our perspective. It's one perspective, it's our perspective. We've done that piece of work thinking about our own knowledge, what we've seen, what we've heard, what we know. And that's absolutely fine. Our perspective is really valid. Are the things that we are aware of, our experiences, they count for something. And we can come from that with confidence that actually we do have some knowledge about our community and we do know some of that journey. But it's also important to recognize it is just one perspective. And in the book, we talk about 5 perspectives that are really important. So that first perspective is our own perspective. The second perspective, though, of course, is speaking to the people who are in the communities themselves, asking for their views. What do they see are the needs? What do they recognize are the assets? What are they passionate about change? And if we're doing this whole process with people in our community, they're already in the room. But also going out, who's not being listened to? Who's not having a chance to use their voice to express what they see as the challenges. Perhaps they're saying something very different from what we've perceived, and we need to listen to that and understand. So who is in your community? How can you engage with them? Schools, parent and toddler groups, other community groups. Actually going out and spending time and listening to what people are saying. That could be through community questionnaires, it could be groups, it could be online communications and conversations. But it's so important to gather that vital perspective. A third and really good perspective is the perspective of other organisations that are already working in your community. That could include other churches. What are other organisations? What do they recognise are the needs? What is it that's already happening? We might do this activity and think, oh great, we need to run this skate park. Let's run a skate park in this area. We need to discover there are already other organisations doing the exact same thing. So talking to other organisations, hearing what they have to say, what is already happening. What do they see are the gaps? What do they see are the needs, opportunities for you to play your part in the community? The fourth perspective is doing your research. Local authority. What does the local authority say, and what does government statistics do? In the book, it gives you a few kind of pointers about different statistics websites that you can go on to really research, like the statistics of your area on a very micro level. What are the specific needs and challenges that are unique to that area? And then the fifth perspective is God's perspective. And what we found is, gathering those perspectives, that might take a few weeks to do as a group while you go out and perhaps have conversations with people and questionnaires and do your research and go and have meetings with different organisations. And it's when you bring them all back together and you meet again as a group and you all share, well, this is what we've learned, this is what people are saying. Asking God in that moment to reveal to you those threads, perhaps those common themes that people have said. What is it that's really tying together here from all these perspectives? And crucially, what do we think God is saying to us here? And taking that as an opportunity to pray, to seek God, to ask him, for him to set the agenda as a community and a church might do. We found some great questions that you can ask when you go about to collect these perspectives. Is asking simple questions like, what hurts? When you think about this community and we think about this area, what hurts? Another great question to ask is, what is strong and what is wrong? What is strong when I think about this place, this community? What is wrong? And also, just a reminder as well to think about when we talk about what community is, that can mean many things. We've done an example of a geographical, local community, but community can be very different for different people. I think over the last 2 years, we've learned so much about online communities. That's where people are gathering. And when we think about an online community, what are the assets and the needs? And other communities similar to that. But the point is, when we decide we're going to do something, we shouldn't just start projects blindly or try and arrange services and projects that don't involve the people they're intended to in that process. And just a reminder of that quote I said earlier from the Poverty Truth Commission, anything about me without me is not for me. Great. So that was good fun. Did you enjoy that? Was that good? Yeah. I'm going to hand over to Andy now, because one of the important things is when we start to identify specific needs is how we unpack that and understand that in more detail. So we're going to hand over to Andy. Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, Simon. So the next activity, you're going to do another one. Is that okay? Yeah. Great. Half of you not quite so sure, but on your table, show this thing here. It's a picture of a tree, which Simon has created himself. There's now one online as well, which you can download off the website, but it's been put together by Simon, I think using clip art last night. It's a good job, mate. On the next slide down, you'll see the idea of exploring needs. Anyone here a keen gardener? About 2 of you, okay? Bad analogy then. But the idea of almost, if you want to get weeds out, you've got to really put out the roots, haven't you, to get the weeds out. The idea of thinking through the needs and the idea of this picture of a tree and thinking through what are some of the implications. So there's kind of 4 parts to this. There is the trunk, which is the main need you're thinking about. And some of these needs may be a need in one moment, but actually might be a leaf or a branch or a root in another moment. But looking at your boards now in front of you, your pictures in front of you, Which of those needs have the most kind of dots in them? Is there one or two on your tables? Do you want to shout them out? What are some of the things that have most dots? Hunger. Mental health. Addiction. Poverty. Isolation. Great. So in a minute, you're going to look at that as being the trunk. On the next diagram down, I think we've got an idea of this tree looking at the concept of debt. So if debt was the trunk, is the next slide down, I think it is? Or one up? There you go. Wow. So the idea of the trunk being debt, and then you'll see then that below the trunk are the roots, and the roots represent the root causes of the problems. So here on this diagram here, we've got the root causes down as poor decisions, as my eyesight's going, I can't read the screen at all, as redundancy, relationship breakdown, low income, and rising costs. Then you've got the branches, which represent behavioural impacts, how behaviour is impacted because of the need. So the idea being avoiding low self-esteem, stress, and being withdrawn. And the fruit or the leaves represent the results and the wider implications. So perhaps being disconnected from your power source, perhaps being hungry, alone, cold, and homeless. So the idea is with this tree, is to be understand the need has root causes, but it also has behaviours, and it also has wider impacts as well. So taking one of your things on your picture, your masterpiece, and it's got the most dots, write that down as being the trunk. I think on your table, you've got some of these on your table. And then fill in some of the bits that could be the roots, that could be the branches, and that could be the leaves. Does that make sense? So for 5 minutes, just doing that to understand again this idea of a holistic approach. Of if we were going to tackle some things in our society, in our community, we really need to tackle. So have a go at that for 5 minutes and see how you get on. Okay, do a couple of tables want to share one of their ideas? So do you want to kind of talk us through kind of what your need was, you identified, and what some of the roots, the branches and the leaves were? Any brave volunteers up for giving it a go? Anyone keen to show us what their go on, go for it. Over here, that's it. Yeah. So what was your need, first of all?
Our need was loneliness. And so going with the root causes, we've got, it could be relationship breakdown, bereavement, old age, mental health, busyness, and therefore you lose connections because you're very busy with life. It could be a personality trait, it could be ill health.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great. And it's from the branches and the leaves on top, anything else, the impacts?
Yeah, so the impacts, we were looking at the behaviour impacts, and we talked, they could be rude, they could be resentful, they could be bitter, they could be very quiet, and that's what we got.
Yeah. Some of the leaves, you get the leaves or other kind of wider factors, or?
So that we didn't quite go onto that discussion.
That's
I'm
cool.
afraid.
No, it's good. Yeah. That's good. You've got 3/4 of a tree. It's good. That's good. Yeah. It's a tree in the winter. There you go.
So
it's good.
So what would be the fruit, the leaves that represent the results and wider implications? Because it could be cyclical, couldn't it? It's just going to go back. It
could be cyclical, and actually all these things, whatever you take as being your tree trunk, can be many different things. So you could almost say redundancy could be the tree trunk, could be lack of employment, and then actually you've got different things coming from there. So they can actually take different parts. What it helps you to see, I think, is the holistic picture of what the needs are. And that often we can only tackle the leaves or the branches rather than actually saying, how do we begin to tackle some of the deeper stuff underneath the surface? So yeah, good. Other want to share again? Anyone else want to share their picture? Yeah, go for it.
Well, this is group contribution, but I'll say it because I wrote it. We've got hunger as the trunk.
Yeah.
Causes would be low income, unemployment, rising costs, both food and energy, and also in houses that are suffering that neglect, personal neglect, potential neglect of children and mental health issues. And the results of that, the manifestations would be low achievement at school, lack of concentration, knock-on mental health issues, potential relationship breakdown, and physical illness would be the manifestations of hunger.
Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. One more quick example. Yeah, great.
Who was that? So I went for disconnected youth.
Yeah.
And obviously at the root cause, things such as ACEs, trauma, deconstructed families, poverty, no services to address needs, peer pressure, and then within kind of like the branches,
Yeah, the behaviours. Yeah.
the behaviours, obviously then seeing antisocial behaviours, mental health epidemic, which we're in with young people now, isolated young people, and then just going on to some of the wider implications, criminal damage of public property, costs to the public purse, stigma around youth and their behaviours, and then obviously because of that, less services or services that actually impact on the behaviours as opposed to the root causes. So we actually aren't ever getting to the end of the cycle.
Yeah, yeah. So this is now downloadable on the website. You can download this and work this through. But as you're looking at the needs you want to try and connect within your community, having this as a kind of framework, actually getting to think through actually what some of the underlying issues and some of the implications. Simon.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, it really does show, doesn't it, that about the need to be holistic in our view in terms of approaching, supporting people, and actually just how connected things are. It's almost impossible to try and think about tackling any kind of need in isolation. We have to think about that bigger picture and the wider impacts on people.